Welcome to the Chief Aim podcast. This is your weekly dose of real experiences, insights, strategies, and action steps for entrepreneurs who want to build and are building something incredible. Welcome back to the Chief Aim podcast. My name is Graystone.
Seb Bates. And my name is Jason Graystone.
And we're back again. Last week we were speaking about entrepreneurship and why you shouldn't be one. And we had lots of great comments about that, and hopefully you got value from that. If you haven't checked it out, go and check it out as well. This week we're going to be talking about something that's really, really big when you are starting a business, or you're running a business, or you're even thinking about starting a business, is competition. I literally had a conversation earlier today where someone said, well, I was thinking of doing this. I know there's already a few people doing it, and I was like, whoa, doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. And I've said before on here, I don't know who my competition are. I don't know what they charge. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they do. Like, there is no competition. There's never competition.
Do you know what? This is one of the main reasons people don't start in business. They don't become entrepreneurs. And I love that, because to be an entrepreneur, you've got to enjoy competition, right? Like, you've got to look at it like, I enjoy competition. I'm looking forward to compete with other people, and I want to be the best. And that's the reality, because, entrepreneurship is kind of meritocracy, right? It's the best idea wins. It's evolution in the economy. It's the best product or service, the most popular product or service gets to the top and typically wins. Unless there's a monopoly, which makes it unfair because no one else can get up there, but that's pretty rare. So if you fundamentally don't like competition, look at our last episode, right? Don't become an entrepreneur. If the idea of competition and someone being better than you and pushing you out of business, and then you having to respond to that and feeling uncomfortable, really terrifies you, don't do it, because it's going to cause you like a decade of stress. You're much better off getting a job where you don't have to worry about competition as much. This is it's a dog eat dog world, really, for most entrepreneurs, unless you're in a very unique kind of niche, and or maybe you've come from a sole trader position or whatever, like I mentioned in the last episode, right, where you've already got a client base. If you don't like it, you're going to struggle with it.
Yeah. But then, the reality is, I think people think the world is a lot smaller than it is when it comes to competition, right? Just for instance, a video went onto YouTube on my YouTube channel, and I've got over 400,000 views on that video in the last 35, 40 days, right? Which is incredible. And those 400,000 views are people that you could think, well, they must have seen someone else teach what you're teaching in that video. There must be other, but they haven't. They've just come to me. 400,000 people of the world, right? Which is a tiny fragment of the population. And just to reinforce that, I'm just going to read some names. Have you heard of Blackpink? Have you heard of Like Nastia? Have you heard of let's pick another one here, Age Tack? Have you heard of you probably heard of those ones.
These are all my alias accounts, by the way, that Jason's reading out where I've written negative comments on his YouTube.
Right. Have you heard of Philippe Neto? Right. Have you heard of A4? I've never heard of any of these people, but the reality is they are the top 30 YouTubers in the whole world. They've got 50 million, 60 million, 80 million subscribers. That's 80 million people that have just subscribed to that whole influence. Wow. And they're selling out arenas, selling out big concerts and tours. And I've never heard of them, right? And you've probably never heard of them, because even 50 million people is tiny fragment of the population of the planet. So when it comes to like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, but there's a few other people doing it, like that is not, don't let that be a limiting belief to starting.
I think that's really reassuring, right? That concept is super reassuring for people. Because there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who maybe they've had a really uncomfortable recent episode with competition where someone's copying their stuff, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And it doesn't matter who you are, right? It doesn't matter how long you've been in business. If someone sets up their stall right next to your stall, it does feel a bit uncomfortable, and there's a part of you which is like fight or flight. And from my perspective, it's like a lot of people, they kind of shut their thing or they cut their prices, and they're in this kind of flight mode. rather than getting into fight mode, right? And, getting back in the trenches and doing the work. And so I would really encourage people to get that energy, that it's an abundance fight mode energy, right? Like just get into it. Don't be scared and have all this nervous energy around it. Instead, just show up for your customers and be the best. That is ultimately all you can do. I think, like I said, I think understanding just how big the world is and how small people can feel is pretty reassuring, really. Especially if you've got a global product. If you've got a global online digital product, like you're not even competing in the same town. If you live in a little town with 20,000 people and you're the only cobbler there, and everyone goes to you to get their shoes fixed or whatever, and suddenly my stories sound like I'm from the 1800s, don't they? But anyway, got Charles Dickens writing these stories. So you're the only chimney sweep in the village. Anyway, so you imagine this, you're this cobbler and someone sets up their stall next to yours. That's terrifying. But now you don't need to be the only cobbler in the town. You can be the person who designs, shoes or makes videos about fixing shoes to the entire world. And now you haven't just got 20,000 people in your town, you've got millions of people watching. And even that, right? A lot of people live in urban areas where there are millions of people. I live in Dubai where there are 3 million people. There's over 800,000 potential customers here. We've got about 1,500 of them on our books right now. We are scratching the surface. A big part of what we do is educating the other 800,000, or 700,000, 790, whatever it is, thousand, right? To see what we're doing and understand the value of what we're doing.
This is a quick shout out to the sponsor of this show, Shield, who help us deliver this podcast along with all the social media that goes with it to help us get it out to more people, which leaves us to focus on just creating more great conversations. If you want to start, delegate, or optimize your social media or podcast, or if you want to build your very own online course or program, get in touch with the team at shieldglobal.io.
And so I think if you've got that approach, it's someone who wants to compete with you, fine. At the end of the day, but it's not a bad energy, right? So this is the other thing I want to talk about. It's like competition. I look at it like martial arts, right? So imagine you
look at everything like martial arts.
Sorry?
You look at everything like martial arts.
Yeah, when I don't tell stories like I'm Charles Dickens, I Anyway, this reminds me of a story about martial arts. Have you heard about the Warrior Academy? So I can relate this to a martial arts thing if you like. You imagine you're training for a Thai boxing fight, right? And I know you've done Krav Maga, Jason, but you can't really train for a Krav Maga fight. You either win or you lose, and if you lose, you're dead. So imagine you're training for a Thai boxing fight, right? And in your class, there's some average people. They're okay. They're typically all right. And then there's someone a new person who joins in, and they just beat everyone, including you. What do you think the outcome of that is 6 months down the line for you as the other martial artist? If you've got this fight or flight energy and you use the fight energy and you respond to it properly as you should, within
Everyone
6 months,
better, right?
You're going to become as good or much, much better version of yourself than you would if you were just on your own. And that's the reality with business as well, right? That the guy next door who sets up his stall, if he's better than you, or at least he threatens you with potentially being better, right? Because a lot of people who start up, they're not as good because you've already got social proof, you've already got credibility, you've already got a database and so on, but the mere threat of them being better than you gives you such a boost to want to use that energy to improve your product or service that you end up being so much better, a much, much better version of yourself. And so I think I always say to my team when we see new competition out there, don't waste the energy. Like, don't waste it. Use the energy, right?
People are always going to resonate with you more anyway than other people. So that, like, it's not like you're competing. It's just people will come to you rather than go there. Like, there was a study done, Pepsi and Coca-Cola, they had a vending machine and they would put the vending machines in various locations and they would get a certain revenue from the vending machine. But it was only when they put Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they literally partnered to put them next to each other so that people had a choice. And it increased both revenue by 59% on the vending machines on both companies, just by having the choice. So
but it goes from the decision they make goes from, shall I have a Coke or not?
Shall I have a Coke? Yeah.
Which Coke shall I have?
Exactly. Right.
And
that's why you see in high streets, there's usually shops next to each other that are carefully positioned next to each other, like two barbershops or to banks or whatever, right? So competition in that sense can help. Someone's always going to resonate with you over someone else, but here's my kind of approach to not worrying about competition and not even having competition, and that's by uniquely packaging a product and service in a way that people can't confuse it with another product or service on the marketplace in the first place, right? So I give this example of a barbershop, funnily enough, and the barbershop, the way you do this essentially is to by focusing not only solving the problem that they're coming to you for, but also easing the pain of the experience of doing business with you. I'll give you an example of builders, right? Everyone wants an extension on their house, but everyone hates having builders in the house. There's nothing nice about having builders walking around your house while the whole work's going on. It's horrendous, right? So be aware of what people hate about actually getting the service from you. So if you're a babysitter, someone has to drop you home, someone has to stay sober, someone has to clear up the mess because you haven't given a crap and you've just trashed the house, someone has to, I don't know, still put the kids to bed or whatever. Whereas if you was a babysitter and you said, here's my service, I know you pay that babysitter £10 an hour, but my service is £100 an hour. And what I give you is my Uber home. You don't have to worry about taking me home. I do an education service where I educate the kids. I cook their meal and I clean up everything and I clean the house and I do this and I do that and I put them to bed and I read them a story and I take a video and a photo, a montage of everything and put it in a folder for you and give it to you as a memory. And that's £100 an hour. Instantly, you're not comparing it to a babysitting service, right? And because that person solved all the problems of you actually endure as a result of getting a babysitter, you are not comparing. There's no comparison. So that you're going to take that part of the market share. And the same with the barbershop. It's like, what do you hate about going to the barbers? I hate having an itchy neck and my t-shirt's ruined. And I have to, no matter how many times I wash the thing, it's got an itchy neck every time I wash it, right? Well, we offer a non-itch neck service, like guaranteed no itch. Jump on a flight straight after your thing, go to a meeting straight after your thing, and you prepare and productize a system whereby you don't, there's no itch on the neck. And it's not very hard to do, but if you do it, you can't be compared to the other barbers, right? You've got a unique selling point. And then when you start to give those little products and features names, names like the non-itch service or the education service for your babysitter, all of a sudden there's nothing like that out there. So therefore you're no longer going, well, they charge £10 an hour. No, you're not. Like £10 an hour for what? Right? To watch your kids and trash your house. There's no difference. So when you go into business, that's kind of the approach that I would take.
I think that's a brilliant approach. And that approach just reminds me of kind of red versus blue ocean strategy, right?
Exactly
where,
that.
If you look at, and maybe we can show a picture on the screen here of what that actually looks like. If you imagine
value innovation,
let's say 80%, probably more like 98% really, of people within your industry in the same town you're in or whatever it is you're in are all doing the same thing, right? If you look at barbers as an example, right? 99% are all doing the same thing. And that is the red ocean, because they're all in there fighting over it. And, it's like it's a big bloody mess because there's so many people biting all the fish and it's just a mess, right? All fighting over everything. Yeah. Then blue ocean is like you kind of cut a small slice off. And Dan Priestley in his work calls this, putting a wedge between the marketplace and your products or services, where you then create your own market. And you do that by positioning yourself where you deliver something in a very unique way. And one of the best ways of doing that, one of the best ways of creating that wedge is having a unique methodology and then a full and remarkable solution that goes alongside that, which solves bigger problems for your customers, more full and inclusive, remarkable, problems for your customers. And that's blue ocean. In blue ocean, there's only a few fish in there. It's just a few businesses in there versus the piranhas in the Red Sea, right? And so those are people who typically got, if you look at it like 80-20, the 20% of people doing the blue ocean strategy take 80% of the market share, right? They take 8% of the revenue. Everyone else who's in the red market typically makes just enough to make their own salaries as a CEO, a basic salary, right? Yeah. Whereas then the issue is this, right? When you're in a blue ocean, you've got all this extra funds, And the beautiful thing about that is then you can reinvest in your products and services to make them even more remarkable, which just makes a bigger and bigger wedge. And suddenly you're so different to your customers, it's so hard for them to catch up and try and do anything similar to you. The only way for them to ever leave that is to create their own wedge and do something unique themselves, right?
Yeah.
So this is one way of looking at it, which is really fascinating for me. And there are so many ways you can do that. As you said, look for the friction points. Try and make the product or service frictionless. Try and make it more smooth and so on, right? Try and make it more remarkable by adding in different features or different inclusions, or even by if you read the book Oversubscribed. It will talk directly about this, where you basically create supply and demand tension, so that if you imagine anyone right now as an example, you might have a barber shop. We'll go back to that example, right? And anyone can just rock up and have get their hair cut. But if you said, right, I take bookings, they're they're typically 3 weeks in advance. We need to book you in. Suddenly it's like, right, okay, well, actually you've created some tension there in the marketplace between supply and demand, which then makes it seem more exclusive, right?
Desirable.
So we charge twice as much to book 3 weeks in advance. Typically what people do is they sign up for the monthly membership instead. So that way you're guaranteed a slot every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks or every 2 weeks, whatever it is you need, rather than having to be on the waiting list, which is for brand new people. This sort of stuff is how you red carpet customers into your business, so that you then come across more exclusive, but you're focusing more on a blue ocean strategy.
Yeah. The blue ocean strategy, if you haven't read that book, by the way, it's absolute classic. Millions of copies sold. It's a great book for marketing. And essentially he talks about something called value innovation. And it's just a number of questions. So who's the existing buyer group, right? It might be people getting their hair cut, or it might be, I don't know, dog groomers or whatever it is. What is the existing value proposition? So what's out there? What's everyone doing, right? And then what you do is you ask a series of 4 questions to basically move it from red ocean to blue ocean. And that is, 1, what can I eliminate? So what can you take away from the product that is not necessary? Lots of things that people take for granted in a product or service you just don't need. Get rid of it. And then the next question is, what can I reduce? So how can you make it simpler and take it back to basics? And then the next question is, what can I raise? So what can you enhance? What part of that service can you make really, really remarkable and really enhance the experience that someone has? And then what can you create? So is there like a little product that you can create, or a service or something you can create to benefit and enhance the product or service? And then ask yourself, what is the new buyer group? And then what is the new value proposition? And that new value proposition will be your new product, right? In the book, he gives the example of Cirque du Soleil, and where they're competing with just circuses, right? People just, an elephant bouncing on a ball and balancing, and a tiger that's angry and getting hit with a stick and all this kind of stuff. And Cirque du Soleil are basically a circus, but they charge hundreds of pounds for tickets, and they go all around the world, right? But they've got a new buyer group. They've got a group of people that are wealthier, they're more kind of middle class, upper class type of people. They're not the young families that are happy watching an elephant bounce on a ball. It's a completely different buyer group, but it's just through that process of eliminating animals and expensive things, trainers and things like that, eliminating the poor jokes and things like that, right? And then reducing on costs and reducing the amount of animals and all that kind of stuff, reducing the celebrity, the bearded lady and all that kind of stuff, all that expensive stuff. And then what can they raise? They raise the experience of the tent. They've got a nice red carpet outside. They've got a bar, a really nice bar area, and they've got really beautiful costumes on the athletes, on the acrobats. And then what have they created? They create new music, original soundtracks. They create stories, original IP stories. Like, there's different stories that you can go and watch in Cirque du Soleil. And then you've got a brand new buyer group by doing the same thing. And that completely separates any competition. And now you're in a blue ocean. So highly recommend you read the book. And
do you know what? I think that's brilliant advice. And that's just a classic example, isn't it? Of just, blue ocean strategy over red ocean. And I think even if you do blue ocean strategy, though, this is the other thing people need to, be aware of, someone will come along and try and copy you, right? And so when someone comes along and copies you, here's what you should do. The only way you can beat the competition is by growing to a point where they're irrelevant. And, for me, one of the best ways of doing that is focusing on your customers and not the competition. If competition come along and they want to copy you, and you take all of that energy, all of that frustration and anger and just like hatred for the competition, and you put it on, what can I do to solve these problems with the customers? Becoming completely obsessed with the customer. It's like, what are they going through? What's the issue? What's the issue? Resolving it, reducing that friction, and just doubling down on that blue ocean strategy, right? In the pursuit of, trying to be as different as possible to your competition. Everything they do. If they call their staff something, you call your staff something else. If they call the customer something, you call them something else. If you've got something within your industry, right, and it's got a typical name for it, start calling that something else. Even the language within your business should be different. The way in which your team they dress, right, should be different. At the Cirque du Soleil example, right, everything. Look at the senses. So we've got something in the Warrior Academy we call the perfect hour. So we don't just look at parents come to the Warrior Academy, they drop their kids off, and then that's it. We look at the parents' hour with us because they have to spend an hour as their kid does, and we don't just ignore them for the hour like everyone else does. So we actually look into their 5 senses. So we're like, right, and we have this perfect hour. I won't go into too much detail of it, but you imagine the first thing they smell. We've got a certain type of incense or aroma, which is like a spa in all of the community rooms, which wherever you are around the world in the Warrior Academy, it's the same smell. And we've got the same taste of coffee. We have a special blend of coffee that's unique to us, which we partner with someone else, but it's exclusive to the Warrior Academy.
It's the best coffee, by the way.
Yeah, right, thanks. So that is something which tastes the same wherever you go in the Warrior Academy around the world. We've got the same 60-minute playlist playing on in the background, which calms parents down after a stressful day of rush hour traffic and being busy with their work and that sort of stuff. We've got the same snacks that we give out that they eat. It's the same greeting from our staff. They see the same videos, which are muted, on the TV wherever they are in the world, right? So it's that perfect hour that they experience. And for me, that's one of the ways that we changed the game. Everyone focused just on the student. We focused on those waiting for the students to leave.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at it that way and you just try and drill down into the nitty gritty of what everyone else is doing, what can you do differently? It's a great way to compete, because you're always going to have a copycat and you're always going to have a thought leader. The thought leader is by nature going to be innovative. They're going to be coming up with new ideas. And that's what you need to seek to be. To be a really good entrepreneur, you want to try and be the thought leader, coming up with these fresh ideas all the time, constantly trying to innovate and improve and change what's the kind of the status quo out there, right? And that, if you do that, competition's relevant. It's as simple as that.
I agree. I think you made a good point about the being customer focused as well. Like just keep worrying about how you can make the experience for the customer better. And look at Jeff Bezos, right? All he does is focus on how he can save the customer time and save the customer space and give them every choice and get it as quickly as possible. And if they can just do that, then most of the people are going to put their money into there. Look at it this way. There's just money in circulation. There's only a certain amount of money in the world, right? They don't print a new load of money to Jeff Bezos just because he's a good entrepreneur. What he does is he takes the majority of the money already in circulation. Why? Because we want to pay him. We want to pay him because he's more worried about our problems than any of the other competition. And whether you like it or not, or you disagree and you say, well, I think Jeff Bezos is this, you can't argue with the fact that most of the money in the world has ended up in his hands as a result of us handing it over to him. So he, in our perception, has provided us the best service there is. And you can do the same in any industry you're in. You just focus on time and space for the customer. That's a good one. Relationship with the customer, emotion with the customer. You focus on those things and they're going to give you their money, and the next person will give you their money. And the more people's money you take, the bigger you can scale and the more lives you can change. So that's how it works.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think it's a great way to wrap it up, really.
Agree. Yeah. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. I enjoyed talking about that. And check out the Blue Ocean Strategy. Also check out Oversubscribe by Daniel Priestley. And that's also a great book. And let us know in the comments if there's any other strategies that you use to remove competition from your business, and let us know if there's any other topics that you want us to discuss, and we'll be back next week. Take care. If you're enjoying these podcasts, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're really getting value from these, we'd really love it if you could let us know on our review page. We'll see you next week.